Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be heading to the Calling Indianapolis, and I am super stoked to see you guys there. But then it hit me. All of my decks are either out on loan to people at ProQuest, or parts of them are given to friends. So I don't have a deck ready for the Calling. But lucky for me, I know just the guys to turn to. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Hometown TCG. You guys know me, my name is Josh, and I got a special guest with me today. Say what's up, dude.
Hey, my name is John. I've been on the channel a few times before, but never in this particular role. I'll let Josh say a little bit more about that.
Well, most importantly, you are you a founding member? Can I call you a founding member
Yeah,
of the team?
yeah,
You are
definitely.
a founding member of Team Ascent that we have on the channel, and we wanted to take a couple seconds and talk about a service that I'm actually I advertise to the patrons, and I'm actually taking right now. I decided to partake in a service. You guys offer flesh and blood, deck building advice, coaching sessions, and I decided with the Calling happening in, what is it, 24 hours? Something?
Yeah, Saturday it starts, but I think most people are leaving very soon. I know we got some winter storms in the Denver area, so I'm a little bit worried about that. But assuming my plane doesn't get grounded, I'll be leaving bright and early tomorrow morning.
Well, with the Calling starting in, 24, 48 hours, I decided I should probably stop making content and build a deck. So I conscripted Team Ascent, and I'm using one of their services. I'm paying for a half hour of deck building session. So this is something that's offered to all the patrons as well as coaching. And dude, be my savior, right? Get me through the Calling.
So, I mean, the first step, of course, is to figure out what hero you and we've talked a little bit off camera, of course, about what you're looking for, but just for everybody watching at home, what way are you kind of leaning and why?
Okay, so I came to you and I said, I'm not a big meta deck guy, and if I was, it would be Prism 100%, not only because I get to use Critical's Infinite Tome of Knowledge to play the deck, but it's got a lot of complex play patterns. I was very off Starvo just because while playing Starvo at a high level is very difficult. I would never take that away from those players. It's not my style. I don't feel like I like that. So I came to you with Viserai, and my reasoning was, you asked me, why do I want to play Viserai? And I said, Viserai feels like he has good run against the two top decks in the format, whether it's Prism or Starvo. Plus, I think Viserai is the strongest deck into the unknown. And what do you think about that? That's my reason for Viserai.
Yeah, I think you have good reasons to be on the deck. I mean, Starvo and Prism definitely have had higher win percentages in the ProQuest season. So Viserai was a third place to those two decks. However, if your goal is to have a really strong base game plan against the field, with the possible exception of Kano and to a lesser extent Rhinar, Viserai is in my opinion, the best deck to be played right now. I know that might be a little bit of a controversial statement because both Starvo and Prism have very proactive game plans. But Viserai, especially if you build the deck with both an OTK plan and an aggro plan, you can really catch some opponents off guard with what you're doing. And a lot of people on our Team Ascent have been saying, oh, I'd really like to take Dark Horse Hero ABC, but the problem is Viserai. It's going to be a substantial portion of the meta, and my deck just can't beat that deck. They don't say that about Prism. They don't say that against Starvo. So I think your analysis of the meta and the reason to be on this deck is a strong one. So do you want to get started building?
I absolutely do. Let me get us to the build view, and then I will point out that anytime you have a pro player, pro team, and pro coach on your side when you make a meta statement, I feel like I'm in a good spot. So I'm happy, and I got Viserai, and you can see FaB right here, like all of our viewers can see. And I just want to clarify with you with this. This is not scripted, and I don't have a shell. I have an empty FaB, and we have done no discussion about this deck, so this is completely on the spot.
The average coaching experience I expect is going to be, here's my list. Do you think it's good? But
I like to push you.
I was just going to say, this will be pretty fun. I think it's going to be good to start from scratch. And Viserai is an interesting hero. I think a lot of people start by constructing what they think the main pillars of a deck will be and then building in extra cards for matchup. But Viserai has really bad matchups if he is only an OTK deck or he is only an aggro deck. It's very
Hmm.
important into a meta as wide open as this one is to have both an aggro plan and an OTK plan. So as you're putting the deck together, you almost have to think yourself, do I have a 60 card legal deck that is both aggro and OTK? And at the end, when we're done building, we're going to look at that. But I think it's easiest to start every single deck with picking out your equipment. So if you want to just limit the search options
Yep.
down to those weapons, perfect.
I,
So
go ahead.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you got it.
So if you were going to pick one of these 5 weapons, which one do you think would go in the Viserai deck?
I was so high on Dread Scythe when it came out. I was so happy that that card was a card, and it just didn't pan out. That's another thing. So I think the obvious choice here is Rosetta Thorn. There's just too much value here, and realistically, in an OTK strategy, I want something that for pitching one card, I can pop an aura and not fire off my rune chance. So I'm a pretty big fan on Rosetta. Are you that pretty fair, right?
Yeah, every winning Viserai list plays Rosetta Thorn. And the reasons are what you said, and it's arguably one of the best weapons in all of Flesh and Blood. Like, you can
100%.
maybe argue Luminaris is better, but they're so different, it's almost comparing apples and oranges. But paying 1 to get 2 physical damage and 2 arcane damage is just such amazing value. And Viserai is one of the best heroes, if not the best hero in all of Flesh and Blood to turn that effect on.
Okay.
Combined with what you said, you want a weapon that costs 1, so you can pop those Prism Spectra really easily.
Yes.
All of these reasons that you said, Rosetta Thorn's it. And in fact, it's so good that I don't think we even need to discuss the other weapons. There's not, like, you could maybe argue there's some weird deck that plays 3 Sigil of Solace and 3 Blessing of Deliverance and Reaping Blade's good enough, but
that was my
you just
counter argument, right? Is if the only thing I feel is if we are in an OTK strategy and I see Bravo across from me, and then Bravo starts playing the blessings and maybe a couple sigils, it's a big hill to all of a sudden start climbing. But you think Reaping Blade not worth a sideboard card slot, we're gonna leave it out, and I'm cool with that, and we'll move on.
Yeah, Flesh and Blood is every deck I build these days. I'm like, oh, I wish I had more than 80 cards because there's more cards that are not just it'd be nice to have, but oh, I'm like losing this match if I don't play this card. But
Okay.
you have to give up percentages somewhere. So moving on to the chess pieces here. I don't think we need to have too much of a discussion. It's Skeletta or bust. It's the whole deck.
Spoiler alert, chat. Skeletta's good.
Yep.
Oh, hold on. Do you want to talk about arms, or can I just add grasp?
So arms and headpiece are very interesting discussions. So let's leave those to last and go to boots real quick here.
Okay, boots it is.
So there's even a little bit of discussion here, but Spellbound Creepers is going to be... Spellbound Creepers is by far the best option over Viserai. You're going to have a lot of opportunities to use these very efficiently to make surprise plays where you play Swarming Gloomveil without having played a non-attack or generated any auras that turn. They say, what's going on? I'm confused. That doesn't have go again, right? You're like, yeah.
And then do you read the runes?
Yeah, you can read the runes, turning on all 4 modes. And then if they haven't blocked for 4, they can't prevent arcane damage for the rest of the turn. And sometimes you can just get them. There's a bunch of cheeky little plays. You don't do that very often, but it's funny when it does come up. So creepers are really, really good. The other card I wanted to talk about very briefly is Sutcliffe's Suede Hide. This card, I think, is under the radar of a lot of players, but I actually think it's the best boot option in the OTK version of Viserai. The reason for that is oftentimes the turn you go off with Sonata, your opponent has presented substantial pressure on their turn, and you've had to block with 1, 2, maybe even 3 cards from their hand. Maybe you've gotten Crippling Crushed, and you got lucky to not have discarded your Sonata, and you don't always have the luxury of being able to have a non-attack action in your hand. Sometimes you don't even have the luxury of having a hand, and you're just playing Sonata out of your arsenal as your only card.
Wow.
And in those situations, Sutcliffe Suede Hides is a sure thing. You're able to give that ninth Blade of the Blood Oath that you draw off the top go again without having played an additional non-attack action besides the Sonata that turn.
That's
So
fascinating. I never thought of that, but that's a completely correct point. And I've run through some Viserai hands, and I actually got to cast a game of yours and watch a game of yours, and I noticed that being a challenge. So does it get a slot though? You talked about how valuable slots are. Does Sutcliffe's get a slot?
into a meta as wide open as the Indianapolis Calling, I think Nullrune Boots is better here, so you don't have 0% against Kano.
Okay.
But if you're going into a local meta where you know you're on OTK 75% plus of the time, I think that Sutcliffe's gets this slot over Nullrune, and you're like, there's no Kanos that play in my local area. Get out of here, Nullrune Boots, because that's the only matchup you want those in.
All right, so we got this Spellbound Creepers, we got the Nullrune Boots. We are on to, so we have Chess Piece, we're missing Head, and we're missing Gloves. For Chess Piece, I thought it was just, oh no, sorry, we have a Chess Piece. I'm sorry, we're missing Head and Gloves. And for Gloves, I thought it was just Grasp, but are you about to tell me why we should be including Vexing Quillhand?
Yep. So you definitely play both these cards.
Really?
Even if
Okay.
you have 0 Kano players, even if you never want Arcane Barrier 2, you play Vexing Quillhand, because Vexing Quillhand is one of the best cards in the aggro Viserai version of the deck, and there are going to be enough prisms at Indianapolis. It wouldn't surprise me if a fourth of the field or more is
Really
prism.
is on Prism.
And I think that number will be even higher on day 2. It wouldn't surprise me if a third of the field is prism by day 2.
All right, so we're teching against Prism a little here. So we know we have to pivot into this aggro strategy. We're going Vexing Quillhand, and are we also playing Grasp of the Arknight? It seems like we have to play both at least, right?
Grasp of the Arknight is amazing in OTK. It's amazing against on-hit effects. It's a mandatory inclusion in the.
Okay, so those are our two. We got our 2 sets of gloves. I'm assuming you're not going to suggest a third glove, so I don't think you're throwing me off here. And now we're on to Headpiece. I'm tempted to think we just want Skullcap.
So Skullcap is a mandatory inclusion.
Is it? Okay.
It will be what you play in most matchups. However, I have I think probably the most controversial of the things I'm going to say about the equipment so far about the second headpiece.
You're going to say Starvo shouldn't be banned. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Give it to me. What's the other headpiece?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. But Crown of Dichotomy.
Really?
Let's get Crown of Dichotomy in the list. So I know I can't go over every single card, or we're going to run over our time. But,
100%. I only paid you for a half hour, dude.
Third piece of Nullrune.
Okay.
And I have actually played this card when my opponent can't do arcane damage to me. The effect of Crown of Dichotomy against a deck that you suspect is going to present no pressure to you is incredibly powerful. So you're sitting against Oldhim.
Mm-hmm.
In round 3 of the Calling. And you have to decide between Arcanite Skullcap to block Oakenold, which is good, or to have the ability to on-demand return a Sonata Arcanix from your graveyard to the top of your library so you know you can go off next turn, which means your arsenal is now free. Normally the play pattern against a heavily controlling deck is to arsenal Sonata Arcanix and just wait. But you need your arsenal to prevent their dominate effects from hitting you. You need to arsenal your immovables. You need to arsenal your red read the runes, your sink belows. Otherwise, they're going to be smacking you for too much damage and you're not going to get to the end game. So having Crown of Dichotomy actually saves you more damage than Arcanite Skullcap in these really passive matches that you suspect are going to go long. It also mitigates your variance. If you draw multiple Sonata Arcanixes early in the game, you now have to decide, am I just having it sit in that arsenal, or can I block with one so I can return it to the top of the deck since you're playing Crown? So Crown is really good in matchups where they're playing Arcane Barrier. I actually like it more than Vexing Quillhand or Nullrune Boots as the one piece. Against most matches that are doing arcane, like the Viserai Mirror, Chain, Briar. those kind of matches. And it's our third piece of null rune for Kano, so we get to the magic number of 3, which is very important for those Kano matches of null rune boots, vexing Quillhand, and Kana Dichotomy. And that's our
Awesome.
equipment package.
Well, this equipment package, this is a much wider equipment package than I thought we were going with. So I already feel, I consider myself a pretty good player. I feel a bit out of my depth here, but this is why I wanted to, really get in and chat with you guys. So we have this equipment package, and we talked about the theory of this deck, right? This deck has to be able to OTK, and it has to be able to pivot into a version of the aggro deck due to the prisms in the field. Like, it's got to be able to do both. So when you approach building this deck, do you build the OTK version and then build a board for the aggro version, or how do you approach it? What are we doing?
The first thing I do is I figure out how many cards I have free to optimize aggro and OTK. So
Okay.
I start by building the deck with cards that will go in both versions.
Okay.
Then I complete the aggro deck, then I complete the OTK deck, and I say, am my cards over? And if I am, the most common way to fix that is to find cards that are good in both versions of the deck and cut cards that are more optimized for OTK or aggro to put them in the middle version of the deck. And sometimes that'll mean you're cutting from these equipment, right? Maybe you decide, I'm building for my local meta, there's no Kano there, I'm going to just cut null rune boots.
Okay.
And have an extra slot. But
Okay.
let's get into the blues
Okay.
for the deck. I think the blues are the thing that doesn't change between the two versions.
Okay.
So, do you own an Arcanite shard?
I could probably get one.
But you don't have one handy?
Not on my person at this second.
Okay. The reason I ask is it is a card that is very easily replaceable. It is almost entirely interchangeable. If you have one, I think it is slightly better to play it. But if you don't have it, I don't even think it's worth the effort of getting one from your friends. There are other options that are almost as good.
Let's build the deck for the people. No Arcanite Shard. What do you recommend? I know we're starting Mauvern Skies. I know a blue Mauvern Skies is in this deck, right?
Yeah, let's start with the non-attack actions. Blue Mauvern Skies is an easy 3 of. I don't think we need an explanation of this card. Same thing with Become the Arcanite.
Okay.
These two cards are by far the best non-attack actions in the deck.
All right. So it looks like we are on 3 Mauvern Skies, 3 blue Become the Arcanite. So far, so good. What else you got? Oath
Is
of
there
the
a way
Arcanite.
we can change the view so we can see the cards that we're adding to the deck? Maybe hitting the down arrow by the loadout section. Right above Rosetta Thorn.
There we go.
That works too. All right, great. So the next non-attack actions for the deck are a little bit more controversial. But I like playing in the current meta 3 Oath of the Arcanite blue.
They're in there.
2 blue lead the charge. And the reason we play Oath of the Arcanite blue is it generates you a rune chant when you play it, so it's good in OTK. Good is maybe a strong word. It is acceptable in OTK.
It's
and
something
it
to play.
Blocks for 3, which is huge.
Okay.
Lead the Charge is almost entirely a concession to Prism's existence in the meta. It is more copies of Mauvern Skies for aggro, which is very strong, but it can also pop Arclight Sentinel and an additional Spectra in the same round that you play it, which is really big game against Prism. It only blocks for 2, making it not great in OTK, but it's still fine. It's still a blue. It still has a lot of utility if you draw it in hand on the turn that you're going off, and it's excellent in aggro.
Okay.
And then the final card, which is also another 2 of, is This Round's on Me.
Wow.
Now, this might not be a card you've seen in a lot of Viserai lists, so I want to give a brief explanation.
Yes,
this
please
card
do.
Competes with Whispers of the Oracle as a slot in the deck. Both of these cards are blue non-attack actions that block for 3. But this card, I think, is better into Prism. It's very good at blocking the endless parade of one attack auras that they have in play. It turns off Ode to Wrath on those turns as well. So only if they have shimmers in play is this card not going to be blocking out all of their aura attacks.
Oh, okay.
And it is strictly unplayable, and I don't mean it can't be in your 60, but I mean you can never play it for its effect against some decks, so you have to be careful with this card. Starvo is the biggest deck. If you play this card into Starvo, you deserve what you get on the next turn, which is almost certainly going to be an activated Starvo ability into a horrible on-hit effect. So don't do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been warned right now. But that's a great point. I like that there's meta choices in this deck for matchups that we might see, or that we think we're guaranteed to see. And then all of my deck building advice to all the patrons and every video that is made is you have to pick blues, but make sure you're picking your pitch for a reason. In a pinch, you need these cards to be doing something. So your explanation between This Round's on Me and Oath of the Arknight, I guess, as well as even into Lead the Charge, is one of the reasons I love so far what we're building here. It's everything has run so far that we have, and it's this is just the blue non-attack action package. We got to run more blues than this, right?
Yes, that's correct. So
Cool.
In Viserai, you want to tilt your blue base to be slightly heavier on non-attacks than attacks. And the reason for that is you're going to be playing several of these out in the OTK plan. And blue cards are obviously the most likely to be pitched in your deck, which means they're the ones going back into the deck, messing with your percentages. So you figure every Become the Arknight you draw, you're going to play in the early game when you're on OTK. And sometimes you're going to play Mauve Skies or Oath of the Arknight for their Runechant generation possibilities, even as OTK. Even though you're not going to be attacking with Mauve Skies, you'll still have played a non-attack action before you play, say, Read the Runes, for example. So Mauve Skies basically generates you one Runechant by turning on Viserai's ability. So these cards are less likely to get cycled back in, so we play more of them than attack actions. So moving on to attack actions, I play Amplify the Arknight Blue as a 3-of.
Okay.
This card... Oh, yep, go ahead.
Is it because it can be a free attack if you need it to be?
Yeah, it's pretty rare that it's a free attack in OTK, but it is not a bad card in the aggro version of the deck. It is more often a 2-cost or a 1-cost for 4, and occasionally is free, which is really nice. But that card is not as good as... Sorry about that. Let me...
Ooh, you left me hanging. It's not as good as what?
Back up here. It is not as good as Shrill. So if you want to Shrill of the Skullhorn.
Ooh, okay.
So Shrill of the Skullform here looks like a pretty unimpressive card. It 2 base power, costs 2, blocks for 3 as a blue. But in reality, in Viserai, it's going to be very rare that this is not a 2 for 5. And that rate on a blue card is one of the best in all of Flesh and Blood.
So 2 for 5 and an Arcane, because if you've created the aura, right, it gets the Arcanal Fire.
It depends on how you count it.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
Maybe you counted it off Red Read the Runes is 3 damage.
Right.
But either way, I think you're splitting hairs. Usually this is coming in for a mixed damage of at least 6, minimum.
I'm just sitting with the expert, and I want to feel like I belong, man. But I'm all in on Shrill of Skullform Blue. I think it's a great blue to have in the deck. I love it. So far, the blues in the deck are carrying a little bit of power as far as the attack action cards are concerned. I like it. What else you got for me?
If you want attack actions that have power, let's include Dread Triptych, because this card is arguably better than Ninth Blade on the turn that you go off, depending on if you've played a Mordred Tide earlier in the turn. It comes in for 4, but if you've played Mordred Tide, then you can potentially generate 6 Runechants plus an additional 2 Runechants from Viserai's ability for playing it, for a total of 12 damage.
Oh my god!
For a blue card, where Ninth Blade, for example, would generate 11.
Wow. Okay. All right, so Dread Triptych's an auto include in the blue slot. Just a great card that kind of does everything you want it to do. And God, the math behind that's fascinating to me. Okay. All right, I'm
Now
into it.
that's a best case magical Christmas land, like you've played Mordred Tide scenario. It's not always better than played, but in the early turns of the game where you're trying to build up those rune chants, it can often be correct to be this weird aggro version of Viserai, even though you're on an OTK list, where you play Mob Skies into a Dread Triptych and then end the turn with like Read the Runes or something like that, and you can generate more cards by more rune chants by attacking with this than you can by just sitting back and turtling it up.
100%.
So,
and everything that hits is just less life points you got to deal with when you go for your OTK. So I love it, dude. Into the Dread Triptych. Are we done with attack action blues?
we got two more.
Oh, we're starting to stack a lot of blue. Okay.
Yeah, we're not playing these in quite the same numbers. So the next one's going to be Spellblade Assault.
Okay.
This is not as powerful looking as some of the other cards that we've been talking about, but it does help early game in rune-chant generation.
Okay.
If you draw some bad hands, it can be kind of a replacement for Read the Runes in the OTK version of the deck. And it's a blue that blocks for 3, so it's not really that bad even in the aggro version of the deck.
Cool. That's a 3 of as well. All these attacks are 3 ofs?
Yep, that's a 3 of, and then finally a 1 of Vexing Mass.
Okay, so spoiler alert. I have called a couple of your games as a caster, as a commentator, and I have seen this tech, and I love the 1 of Vexing Malice tech. I love this.
As soon as your opponent sees it, if they're really strong, they say, oh no, now I have to play around a Vexing Malice as well, because they're going to assume playing 3 of this card when they see it most of the time.
Yes.
So it means that they're really aggressive on their blocks, and when they get in the late game, it's really tough. But sometimes just having the ability to swing for 2 Arcane with your Rosetta and swing for 2 Arcane with the Vexing Malice is what you need to get there against some of those really defensive decks like Oldhim and to a lesser extent like Starvo. Crown of Seeds is real good at preventing Rosetta Thorn's extra damage, but it's pretty rare for these decks to have Arcane Barrier 2 against Viserai. So this card can often go the distance, even just as a 1-of to get that final point of damage in.
That sounds fantastic. And I got to pause you here. Your camera froze.
Oh.
So
well,
you gotta give me the old camera restart. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. All right. Through the magic of TV, your camera is fixed, dude. Awesome.
And now we are moving on.
All right. So we've got our blue package.
You'll notice we have a lot of blues.
Lots of blues. I was just going to say that, yeah.
So part of the reason for running this many blues is it gives you more flexibility against decks like Kano. Normally, when you're running a really tight list and you don't have any extra blues to bring in, you have to decide, am I racing Kano or am I going to be trying to block out their most important on-hit effects like things like Sonic Boom and Aether Wildfire?
Sure.
And if you don't run enough blues, it's hard to do both. So this really helps your aggro plan against decks like Kano, where those extra blues are very important.
All right.
So moving on.
Let's get to the meat. What am I smacking people with this weekend? That's what I want to know.
Absolutely. So scrolling up to our reds. And actually, I'm sorry. We're going to make one small change to the blues, because I was working off an old list when I suggested one of them.
Okay.
We're going to cut all 3 copies of Blue Amplify the Arknight for now.
Ooh, okay. That's spicy. What are we replacing with anything?
Not in the blues.
Oh, okay. All right. So we cut the amplifies. You said you want to go to reds next. So we're looking at reds. This is our meat and potato. This is the beef. What are we throwing?
So we're going to start with Red Amplify the Arknight. This card is a popper for Heralds and Prism, and just a very efficient attack for the aggro version of the deck.
Awesome. And I'm assuming we're going 3 of, unless you tell me otherwise.
Yeah, it'll be 3 of unless I say it's not 3 of, just to keep things nice and easy.
Sweet. All right, Amplify the Arknight it is. We'll throw them in. I think I saw that one coming, so I think I might be catching your drift.
Yeah, so Meet and Greet Red is going to be next, and this is going to be a 2 of. So Meet and Greet was very good in some decks like Briar and Chain, where they were less likely to prevent your arcane damage. But
Mm-hmm.
in Viserai, they're bringing in arcane here every single time. And
Sure.
this card has been the closest thing to an underperformer in the aggro version of the deck. That is a red attack. The reason to run it, though, is it's good in both the OTK version of the deck and the aggro version of the deck, as you really want your attacks to have go again.
Mm.
Uh, when
Under
on that OTK turn. And it's
Perfect.
impossible for them to prevent all of the arcane damage when you go off on that OTK turn.
I'm into it. It's in there. It's a card that I have behind the scenes talked with Dennis about, like, I don't love this card in a lot of aggro builds because it feels like good players stop the arcane and see arcane triggers coming, and they'll choose to take physical damage over arcane damage. Now, I know we have a new card out of Everfest that kind of throws a wrench in that plan a little bit, but I see what you're saying with Meet and Greet. All right, man, I'm in. I'm in on Meet and Greet. What else we got?
Mordred Tide ×3.
Okay.
It's a pillar of the deck. Since we have a short session, we'll just move past this one. Rattlebones
Okay.
×3 is a critical card in OTK and is pretty good in the aggro version of the deck. It allows you to turn hands that are all non-attack action hands into a hand that's playable and will allow you to do multiple things and attack with your Rosetta Thorn in many cases. And in the OTK version of the deck, it allows you to generate action points at instant speed if you don't have a different non-attack action in hand with your Spellbound Creepers, because you can play it at instant speed after playing something like Ninth Blade to get the discount. So this card is really good in both versions of the deck. It's definitely a 3 of.
All right, so FabDB doesn't want us to have these cards, but I'm going to get them anyway. I'm going to find a way. So
Well,
we got 3 more
I think
Tide.
it may be because you're on non-attack actions right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to find Read the Runes on
Oh.
non-attack actions.
Fair enough.
That's correct.
Yeah, Read the Runes red is definitely going in.
And then you said Rattlebones, right? Was the other one?
Rattlebones, yeah.
And Rattlebones is also a non-attack action, but wow, FabDB does not like us right now. That's fine. How do you like the refresh button, FabDB? That's what I thought.
Don't forget to save, in case it doesn't save it. I guess it should save it. Hopefully.
I think it should save it. All right. Grouping by pitch. We're in the edit mode.
Oh,
so we did
perfect.
have Mordred. We did get Read the Runes. I do need to grab Rattlebones, it looks like.
Yeah.
All right. So we got Rattlebones into the deck. A good non-attack action package that just came into the deck. Very cool. What are we on now in our reds?
So we're going to now add Reduce to Runechant red ×3. This is only played in the OTK version of the deck.
Okay.
And is very good. Anytime you're blocking your opponent out and generating a Runechant with one card, that's the kind of value you want to be on. If we had more room in the deck, we'd even play the yellow version of this card.
I love the value. All right, so it's are we pivoting into defense reactions? We're on OTK, and everyone knows we got to have some back foot action here. Are we pivoting into defense reactions? Because if so, Starvo's a thing. I bet we're running unmovable.
Yeah, I was just going alphabetically, but if we want to go by type, let's do all the defense reactions. No, let's do it. So we're playing Sink Below red ×3. This card is sneaky in that it's kind of like Reduced to Runechant in that it generates Runechants by allowing you to bottom cards that are not going to help you take your turn and hope to draw cards like Read the Runes or other Runechant generators.
Okay. Sinks in there.
And then you called it. Red Immovable ×3. This card feels terrible in some matchups because it's just a bad rate. Like if you're playing this into Frost Lexi, Ice Lexi, and she has Channel Lake Frigid in play, you're going to hate this card in your deck. But it is necessary in a Starvo meta, and it's very, very good in any deck that has those big dominated attacks, especially with on hits.
Why can't I find Unmovable? Is FabDB...
Well, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. It's not in the non-attack action section. I can tell you that.
We shouldn't be. I keep trying to get out of the non-attack action section, man.
It keeps bringing you back.
And Every time I try to leave,
There you
something
go.
keeps pulling me back. All right, I'll just
Right?
manually do it. All right, content creator here. All right, let's go. All right, so we got Unmovable. What about Fate Foreseen?
Fate Foreseen, I'm a big believer in this card. I actually played it in Chain before Seeds got banned. I liked that card so much, but I don't think we have room for it. I think
Okay.
Sink Below, Reduced to Rune Chant, and Immovable are all better than it, and we unfortunately do not have room for it or any other defense reactions in the deck.
Okay.
There is something to be said. The next defense reaction I would play if I was in a meta where I knew there would not be many opponents that I need to go aggro into would be Yellow Reduced to Rune Chant.
Okay. All right, so that's our defense reaction package. It's coming in. We got it set up. What's next?
Moving back to our non-attack actions, since FabDB is making you be very specific.
He really wants me to be on non-attack actions.
We're going to be adding Revel in Runeblood to the deck. This is a card that is terrible in the OTK version of the deck. So you will only be playing it in aggro, but it's just too good in the aggro version of the deck to not play. It generates somewhere between 5 and upwards of even 7 if you've played a Mordred Tide, Rune Chants, and that's just like, you feel like you're a wizard, Harry, if you play this card with the amount of arcane damage that it deals with one card. So definitely quality card.
Dude,
one quick tip for playing it, you can play this card even if you haven't played an attack action and a non-attack action previously. It just doesn't do anything.
So you can
sometimes
use it to generate a Rune Chant.
Yeah, exactly. You never want to be doing that with this card, but if you have a key card in Arsenal and you just don't want this in your hand at the end of turn, sometimes it can be correct to just play it out for its non-effect.
Yes, for the lack of effect. Okay. All right. Very, very cool. So we got Revel in there that will be probably thrown into the board. What else are we thinking in non-attacks?
Runeblood Incantation. This is a new rare from Everfest. The card has been a consistent overperformer in both the aggro and the OTK version of the deck. It's not as good as Red Read the Runes in OTK, but it's probably better than Red Read the Runes in the aggro version. The ability to give you one Rune Chant to discount all of your attacks every turn for the next 3 turns in aggro is amazing. So this is an easy 3 of in both versions of the deck.
Okay. All right, we got Runeblood Incantation slotted into the deck.
Next up is the best card in the deck, Sonata Arcanics.
The best card in the deck, some of the best art. I've loved this card. I don't think we need to spend much time on this. I think everyone knows. And just to clarify, it gets played in the aggro version and in the OTK version.
Absolutely. Even Sonata for 0 is fine.
Right.
In the aggro version. You're not going to be running all these defense reactions in the aggro version, so you're close to 50-50 on your attacks and non-attacks. So it's a pretty big game, and if you ever draw an attack with it, it's just amazing in Viserai.
I love it. All right, Sonata's in the deck.
So those are all the red non-attack actions. There's 2 yellow ones we'll grab real fast while we're here. And that's going to be Maruvian Skies and Read the Runes. Yellow for both.
Are they 3 ofs?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Read the
Runes. Just too good in the aggro version of the deck. And Yellow Read the Runes is a sideboard card that you bring in when you're playing OTK.
All right, so we got those in. Go ahead.
Moving on to our attack actions. So we've done some of the red ones already, but the next one that we are moving to is Rune Flash.
Rune Flash Red. You cut out there for a second, but I got you. It's probably in attacks. It's probably not in weapons. That'll be a 3.
This card feels embarrassing compared to one of the cards we're going to be talking about later. But it's still really good.
And it's still a source of go again, which sometimes we talked about you're just a little shy on.
Yeah, and it's unconditional go again, which is very nice in the aggro version of the deck. You're usually sporting at least 1 Rune Chant at the end of the turn, so 4 damage with go again for 2 is not the worst rate in the world, and it pairs well with your Rosetta Thorn, so you can usually end up pitching a blue, playing this card and attacking with Rosetta. Attacks that swing with a cost of 2 are very good in this deck.
Sweet.
Moving on to the card I was alluding to is Swarming Gloomveil.
I already started typing because I knew what was gonna blow Rune Flash out of the water. I'm on the same. I think I'm starting to pick up the Viserai, the Ascent Viserai vibes, dude. All right, so Swarming Gloop Veil, and we spent a good amount of time talking about this card earlier in the vid. It's just, I mean, it's an auto include in both versions of the deck. It's so good.
Yeah.
All right, so we are at 75. It looks like we're starting to cap out, and there's a couple notable excludes here that I'm waiting for you to say. All right, what else we got?
So the yellow attack action is going to be Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath.
Okay.
This card is going to be a 2-of.
Okay.
It is a 2-of in both the OTK and aggro version of the deck. You never cut this card from your list, which I think is interesting to some people.
That's fascinating to me.
You can block with this card in the aggro version. It's yellow in the aggro version. And sometimes you have enough rune chance, or say a Bloodsheath Scaletta, that allows this card to be playable with a shockingly low number of rune chance. If you go into your turn with Vexing Quill Hand and Bloodsheath Scaletta up, and 1 rune chant, let's say, you can pop the Quill Hand, then pop the Scaletta, and you can play this card for the low price of a blue.
That's two cards for 9 plus all those runes coming in. That's a pretty good rate. I love that.
The turn with 1 rune chant, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think most people think of Ninth Blade as a playable card when they start their turn with 1 rune chant, but the Vexing Quill Hand and Scaletta make it very, very possible.
Some people don't think that. I'm some people. Some people is me. But no, that's fascinating, and it seems like it goes in all the way. All right, so we're up to 77.
And then the final card to include is the only, besides some of the equipment, true sideboard card of the deck that only comes in particular matchups.
Okay.
And that is Runic Reclamation. The ultimate Prism Hoser.
Now, this card just screams, I hate Prism. 100%. I love this card because of how much it targets a single hero. Okay, so it looks like we got a pretty solid deck built out. It looks like we can pivot back and forth between an OTK strategy and an aggro strategy. And what do you think, really quick? Are you pretty happy with this deck? Are you fond of it?
Yeah, this deck has been very successful. It does sometimes lose to the high roll if you get like triple Arclight Sentineled in a row when they have a Genesis and 2 Spectral Shields in play. Like, sometimes Prism's going to get you, and we all know what Starvo can do in the format. So I'm not saying that this deck is unbeatable, but if you want a deck that's going to be 50% against the field and sometimes be way better than that against some of the dark horses of the field, this is the deck for you, and I really encourage you give this deck a few spins, and I'm looking forward to giving you some last-minute coaching day of in person on Friday, and let's see how you do at the Indianapolis Calling. I'm aiming for a day 2 for you. I think it's possible.
Whoa! I think it's probable. I got a deck. I got a deck from Team Ascent. I am Josh, Hometown TCG, king of the casuals. I will 100% day 2 this thing. And then I know that what you guys are thinking. This deck has a sideboard plan. John and I are gonna move cards in the board, but I'll tell you what. We're going to move cards into the sideboard and show what should be sideboard cards, what's going to go in the OTK version versus the aggro version, and we are only going to post that link into the Discord. So if you want to check out that link, if you want more than just this bare bones list, you got to visit us at patreon.com/HometownTCG. You got to jump in the Discord, get kind of access to behind the scenes, or you could just take this deck and give it a run, man. I love what we've built here. Thank you so much for your time. This is kind of what people can expect if they want to go through a deck building session with you guys at Ascent, kind of talking over card lists. And you guys can push back more. I was choosing not to push back. I was not saying I don't want to play this card, but next time, man, you better be on your toes. I'm putting you to the test.
Love it. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, guys. Well, again, check us out at Patreon. Check us out on all of our socials, link in the video description. And then finally, cheer on Team Ascent as they go for it all at the Calling Indianapolis. Good luck to you guys. And until next time, my name is Josh.
And I'm John.
And, wow, that was way too familiar. And we'll see you around. Take it easy, everyone.
Later.